Bibles with me, if you would, I'd like you to turn to Matthew 18 with me, please. School's about to start. All the kids going, and they all can't wait to get to school, can't wait to start learning. Initially, as school progresses, and they don't like it so much, but initially, little kids are all excited about it, and then it's always so cute to watch them do their little first school programs, and at the end of the year, their little programs we see. And one of the things that I always thought was cute to watch was when they ask all the kids what they want to be, and what do you want to be. It's always cute to listen to what everybody wants to be. So I want to ask us tonight, what do we want to be? What are our aspirations? What are our ambitions? What is our desires? What do we want to be? Have we realized yet what is really important to be? You know, a lot of times that a little kid, but sometimes they're all usually cops and firemen and astronauts, you know, superheroes. They got all these things, and sometimes they want to be things that everyone laughs like, yeah. But we realize as we grow older what is realistic. We realize what is important and what is possible and what is, things. Expectations can change with reality setting in. At our stage today, what do we still want to be? Do we realize that we got to the stage yet do we want to be more like Christ? Where we want to live eternity with Him? Do we realize what really is important in life? Do we realize that we are just here for a short time to determine where we're going to spend eternity? How many adults today that is trying to survive in the cruel adult world? One of the neat things you see passed on Facebook is I'm tired of adulting. I want my temporary subscription to adulthood to I want to cancel it. I want to go back. A lot of people talk about they want to go back to being kids. How good it would be to go, go back to school and just to have those concerns and to be there. We realize today is just a temporary stage that we're determining where we want to spend eternity at. So what are our ambitions? Those that spend their ambitions in school, strictly wanting to do sports, or wanting to do all the clubs, or wanting to do all the extracurricular stuff, those that spend all their school years looking for the fun stuff instead of preparing for adulthood becomes a big shock to them. They're not prepared for it. If we spend our time on this earth today trying to enjoy ourselves, trying to do what we enjoy, trying to do what we want, trying to do things, but our ambitions are fleshly, when we get to eternity, we're going to be surprised as well, aren't we? We're going to not be prepared for eternity, to spend it with Jesus, to have the one that we really want. So that again, this evening, what is our ambition? What do you want to be? Do you want to be more like Christ? Do you want to spend eternity with Him? What do you want? How childlike can we still be? The reason I start off in Matthew 18 is because in verse 1 he comes down, he compares it to little children. Unless we be converted as little children. Let's go back to focusing on things that are not fleshly based, but things that are faith based. The little child trusts in their parents to provide. And when you go back to the little children, the average little children should want to be like their mommy or daddy, don't they? How many times did you hear the little question, I want to be like my daddy. I want to be like my mom. I want to be like that, because I have total faith and trust and confidence in that little child. We as God's children, we should want to be like Him. What do you want to be? I want to be like Christ. I want to spend eternity with Christ. I'm converted to get rid of the world and to transform to be like Him. Matthew 18:1. At the same time came the disciples unto Jesus, saying, Who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? A lot of times we determine what we're going to be about the greatest. Who is the greatest? Who is the greatest in the kingdom? And Jesus called a little child unto Him and set him in the midst of them. And said, Verily I say unto you, except you be converted and become as little children, you shall not you shall not enter into the kingdom of heaven. Whosoever therefore shall humble himself as this little child, the same is greatest in the kingdom of heaven. And whoso shall receive one such little child in my name receiveth me. Whosoever shall offend, and he continues on with the question going back to the little child. They want to know who's going to be the greatest, and he goes back to humbling yourself as a little child. And it's not important what you are, it's important whose you are, isn't it? Is that not a much better statement? It's not important what you are, it's important whose you are, that we are God's. If we're God's children, then that is where we shall enter into the kingdom of heaven. If we're His children, if we humble ourselves and acknowledge that we want to be like Him, we want Him. What are our ambitions this evening? In Matthew chapter 4, we'll stay in Matthew a little bit for a few more passages. Christ came to earth as prophesied throughout the whole Old Testament. It was set forth in motion before the foundation of the earth. Christ was the Lamb slain. It was all set in motion, and it all pointed to that. And although that man may not have understood the prophecies accurately enough, some did because they showed up at the manger, but God's people were still looking for him to come as a ruling king. But as it all prophesied for him to come along and for him to do the ministry, do you think it just was the king's idea to kill Christ as he was a newborn? Or was it a little bit of a plan of Satan to destroy? Satan was always about to destroy. And then Satan wanted to change it up all along. And Satan, after the baptism of Christ, when Christ was up on the Mount of Temptation, led by the Spirit to go up there to prove himself, he has an interaction here in Matthew chapter 4 with Satan, the devil. In verse 8, again the devil taketh him up into an exceeding high mountain, and showeth him all the kingdoms of the world and the glory of them, and saith unto him, all these things will I give thee, if thou wilt fall down and worship me. So if Christ's ambition would have been fleshly, Satan was prepared to give him everything, wasn't he? Realize God gave Christ to be over all. God gave him Christ to be next to him. But Satan was then offering him to have all he had to offer. What Satan has to offer, if we want it, he'll offer it to us. If it will prevent us and keep us from serving God, he will give us a chance to seek after it. We may never obtain it, but he'll let us chase it. He'll dangle it in front of us and let us chase it if that's our ambition. If our ambition is to gain fleshly notoriety or fleshly wealth or fleshly gain of any sorts, it's always going to be dangled right in front of us just to keep us going a little bit farther, a little bit farther, a little bit farther, because ambition is always just pushing and striving. Satan here offered Christ, I will give you all. He saith in verse 9, all these things will I give thee. Showed him everything. If thou wilt fall down and worship me. If your ambition is to gain this, I'll give it to you. But Christ answered and said unto him, get thee hence, Satan, for it is written, thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and him only shalt thou serve. Notice that Satan was offering to give Christ everything if he just bowed to him. And Satan didn't get it. Because Christ said, nope, it doesn't matter. Get thee hence, Satan, for I will worship the Lord thy God, and him only shalt thou serve. Realizing we are serving, it's just who do we serve. It's not what we are, as I already asked. It's whose we are. Who are we serving? What is our ambition? Realizing those two questions go together so fluently and so perfectly to answer each other. Who are we serving will tell us what our ambition is. Go with me to chapter 16. What's it going to profit you if you gain everything, but then lose your own soul? What does it profit if you get everything, but then it doesn't profit you? What did it profit you? You know, if you keep telling your employer you want to raise, what would it do me good if my boss said he'd give me $100 an hour, but I only get 2 hours a week? You know that? That's not it. That's the point. You know, we can there's always something else. What are we striving for? What are we gaining? If we gain the whole world, but we lose our own soul, what we have, because what's going to happen to the whole world when Christ returns? It's all gone. And there is no insurance policy that's going to protect you from it. It's gone, it's gone. And in Matthew 16, let's start in verse 21, if you would. Jesus reveals his coming death and his resurrection. From that time forth began Jesus to show his disciples how that he must go into Jerusalem and suffer many things of the elders and chief priests and scribes, and be killed and be raised again the third day. When Satan offered Christ everything the world had to offer, and Christ rejected it, Christ knew this day was coming too, didn't he? He knew he was going to reject what the flesh had. He knew he was going to be tortured with all the flesh could. He knew that he must go. He didn't just come to realization in the garden. He knew all along. He's telling them now, it's that time. I must go to Jerusalem. I must be killed and raised again the third day. Verse 22, then Peter took him and began to rebuke him, saying, be it far from thee, Lord, this shall not be, shall not be unto thee. I like reading how Peter was rebuking Christ. Talk about ambitious. That's a pretty lofty thing to try to do, isn't it? And if you want to rebuke Christ, he goes, no. But why was he rebuking Christ? Because what he was saying was going to happen was against what Peter wanted. And Peter rebuked him and said, no. Peter rebuked. Peter took upon him to rebuke Christ. He thought he could rebuke Christ. That's ambitious. And we say, well, who would dare rebuke Christ? Well, what do I do when I try to argue with Christ, when I try to tell Christ, no, that's not what I want to do? To some degree, we rebuke Christ when he tells us to go do something. And we, oh no, it's not what I want to do. When he tells us not to do something, we rebuke Christ. No, that's what I want to do. In our own way, we are ambitious enough to refuse Christ, to rebuke Christ. How close are rebukes and refuses together? So again, Peter's rebuking. But Christ responded to him. He turned and said unto Peter, get thee behind me, Satan. Thou art an offense unto me, for thou savorest not the things that be of God, but those that be of men. What was he savoring? The fleshly relationship with Christ. Because Christ had said, I'm going to die. I'm going to go up to the elders and the chief priests and scribes, and they're going to kill me, but then I'm going to be raised again the third day. He's trying to tell them what was going to be happening. He was rebuking and saying, no, don't let this happen. It shall not happen to thee. And Christ says, get behind Satan, because you desires the things that be of men. It's not, if we're desiring what men wants. Verse 24. Then said Jesus unto his disciples, if any man will come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. Luke 9 uses the word daily to this. We continue on 25. For whosoever will save his life shall lose it. Whosoever will lose his life for my sake shall find it. What is a man profited if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul? Or what shall a man give in exchange for his soul? What the Son of Man shall come in the glory of his Father with his angels, and then he shall reward every man according to his works. Verily I say unto you, there be some standing here which shall not taste of death till they see the Son of Man coming in his glory. Verse 26 again, for we read with us, for what is the man profited if he shall gain the whole world? If your ambition, your goal, if your aspiration, if your desire is to gain things of the world, whether it's comfort, whether it's position, whether it's possession, whatever it may be, pleasures, privileges, whatever you're wanting in the world, it has a limit to it. It has an end date on it. If you gain the whole world, but if you lose your own soul, what shall a man give in exchange for his soul? What is our ambitions? What did we strive to do so far this week? Not within a question and answer period. When I ask someone, what's your ambition? If I have a Bible in front of me, they know I'm a preacher. If we're in a church setting, what's your ambition? They pretty well know what answer they want to give. They know, we know what we should say. We all know we shouldn't say, I want to be rich. We know better than to say, I want to be wealthy and I want to have this, or I want to retire healthy. We know better than to say some things, but yet do we know enough to go ahead and live the life that we want to live forever with Christ? That we want to be like Christ? That we don't want to give nothing in exchange for our soul? What is our ambition? I keep on asking that because that's what I want you to ask yourself. What are our ambitions? Do you think Peter was rebuking Christ just because he was that ambitious and he thought he was worthy to rebuke Christ? Or he didn't want to lose Christ? He enjoyed being with Christ. Again, it was his fleshly jealousy. It was his personal fleshly moment he was concerned about. Turn with me to James chapter 4. It's sad to acknowledge that our relationships with one another are to and fro and up and down and good and bad, and they go and come. And we have all these reasons of why they go and come. And all these, well, this one did that or that one did this. We have all these ideas, but the true short of it is, if one or both are out of step with God, it's going to strain your relationship spiritually, isn't it? If one of you or both of you are out of step with God and have fleshly ambitions, then it's going to strain your relationship spiritually, and it's going to strain how you get together. Fleshly desires ends up rubbing against each other. So if your fleshly ambitions ends up rubbing against each other, and it's going to cause conflict. If everyone has the mind of Christ, you wouldn't be fussing one with another. It wouldn't happen. The disciples fussed with one another, usually about who was the greatest. That was what they was even asking a while ago. Who's the greatest in the kingdom? Who's the greatest? Because that's a fleshly mindset of who's the greatest. But a child's mindset is of humbleness. And it's not of what I am, but whose I am. And in James 4, verse 1, from whence come wars and fightings among you, come they not hence eat of your lust, that war in your members? I get called in as a mediator so many times. There's a lot of times people end up with a quarrel, and they come to me to help them be a peacemaker or a mediator between them. Sometimes they come together, sometimes they come one at a time, wanting to tell what the other one has done. And we try to talk, everybody wants to talk about what happened. Everybody wants to talk about what has happened. And usually it comes down to an offense has happened because somebody's ambition has been questioned, or has been suppressed, or has been rejected. Something is going against their ambition, against their goal, against their lust. Because ambition, if I ask what is your ambition, that's a word, and that's a phrase in question. You can, well, I want to be. But if I ask you what is your lust, that puts a different tone to the question, doesn't it? What's your ambition? What is your lust? They sound like completely two different questions, but in reality, how different are they? Because we have ambitions, and a lot of times if our ambitions are based off of our lust, then we're going to have quarrels one with another. And when people come, and I'm not just saying when people come, myself, when I have quarrels, when I have disputes, when I have offense, when I have sour feelings, when I have something negative, it's because I'm focusing on something non-godly. I'm focusing on my ambition and not God's ambition. Because when something's not going my way, or my ambition, and I start getting sideways and negative, and we start quarreling, and we start getting offenses and feelings, what would God's ambition be? For me to have peace? Let everything be done for the edification of one another, right? Is my ambition to uplift my brother? Is my goal to be more godly, Christ-like in that matter? Realizing again what we're reading here in James 4, is there are fightings and wars and there are troubles they're having, they're coming because of our lust. When you have a situation with anybody, I want you to stop and analyze your ambition in this situation. Would I rather win this battle of the flesh, or would I rather sing praises to God with this brother in eternity? Because sometimes you got to make the choice of one or the other, don't you? Sometimes you got to make the choice whether you want to win this battle. Do you want to keep this fight going? Do you want to keep this going? Do you want to keep this office going? Do you want to, I'm right, and I'm going to prove it? Well, you probably could and will, and you might be. But is your ambition so bullheaded and stubborn that you want to push forward and prove you're right? Or do you want to sing praises to God eternity with the brother you're offended at? Because as I just said, I'm going to say again, sometimes you have to pick one over the other. Because if you keep pushing and you keep pushing, then you might not be the one there. So our ambitions, if they're fleshly, they will cause quarrels and fights and strifes with one another. James 4:1, from whence come wars and fightings among you? Come they not hence even of your lust, but war in your members. Now, I don't have another translation to read to us this evening, but I just wanted to present to you to consider that. Whence come the quarrels among you, but from your own ambitions. If our ambitions are not godly, they're going to cause troubles. It keeps going, verse 2, ye lust and have not, ye kill and desire to have, and cannot obtain. You fight in war, yet ye have not, because ye ask not. Ye ask not. Why don't we ask for it? Because when we go to God in prayer, we know better. When we go to God in prayer, we know better than to ask for that. Ye ask and receive not, because ye ask amiss, that you may consume it upon your lust. And there we do that. So we can pray for so many things. Pray for this and pray for that. And again, there's nothing too small to pray for. We'll never think there is. There is nothing too small to pray for, but there are things too fleshly to pray for, isn't there? There are things that are too fleshly to pray for. Small and fleshly are not the same thing. Ye adulterers are sore and adulteresses, know ye not that the friendship of the world is enmity with God? Whosoever therefore will be a friend of the world is the enemy of God. Ye think that the Scripture saith in vain, the Spirit that dwelleth in us lusteth to envy? But he giveth more grace, wherefore he saith, God resisteth the proud, but giveth grace unto the humble. Now grace, remember, from me continue to share the divine influence on our heart, the reflection in our life. The evidence of Christ, the influence of Christ in our life is given to us when we're humble. If our ambition is to be more Christ-like, then we need to be more humble. And we will be. Because Christ was so humble, he was God, part of the Godhead, Son of God. And he came and became flesh for us. And not just flesh, willingly became sin for us, to pay the price for us. I'm going to close in 1 John chapter 2. Philippians 2 speaks of looking not every man on his own thing. Let's go ahead and turn there instead. Turn to Philippians 2 as the final reading. I read 1 John often to us, where it says, for all that is in the world, lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, and pride of life. That's all that's in the world. Lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. That's what's in the world. Love it not. But Philippians 2, verse 1. There be therefore any consolation in Christ, if any comfort of love, if any fellowship of the Spirit, if any bowels and mercies, fulfill you my joy, that you be like-minded, having the same love, being of one accord, of one mind. What's that like-minded? The mind of Christ. Because if there be any other mind, then we're going to have offense. Verse 3, let nothing be done through strife or vainglory. Vainglory is an ambition. People want to get the credit. They want the credit. They want to have the notary. They want to have the signature. They want to get the credit. They want the acknowledgement. They want someone to recognize them. If someone recognizes me, then they're not seeing God. Again, God's people should desire the recognition, but all praise and honor and glory should be to who? To God. To Christ. if you want someone looking at you, then they're not seeing God. I don't want people seeing me. I want them seeing God in me. Sometimes I desire in my flesh recognition. Sometimes I desire in the flesh that pat on the back. Sometimes I want some, recognition and credit for what I do, for all the sacrifice of time. My flesh at times wants it. But when my flesh is wanting that, that is my flesh wanting it, and not the Spirit of God in me. And if someone pats my back, then again, sometimes it's a bad thing, because I start wanting. I don't need it. Let everything be done. Let nothing be done through strife or vainglory, but in lowliness of mind, let each esteem other better than themselves. Look not every man on his own things, but every man also on the things of others. Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus. So, what is your ambition? If your ambition is to put others first, then that's the mind of Christ. If your ambition is, well, I want to be able to eat, drink, and be merry, or I want to sit back and take ease, or I want to enjoy my latter days, or I want to enjoy my day off, or I want to enjoy this, or I hope that we realize it's not what we are that's important, it's who we are. I hope we realize that our ambition needs to be for others, because Christ came to save the world. He is not willing that any should perish, but that all should come to repentance and knowledge of the truth. I should have ambition to lead others to Christ. I should have ambition to put others first and to help them. To be willing to say, not my will, but thine will be done. My ambition shouldn't be to rebuke Christ when he says that I need to do something for others. When Christ tells you to do something for others and your mind says, what about me? Why do I need to do that? I need to do that. I need to do it. Again, that's not the mind of Christ. That's the mind of the flesh. Our ambitions need to be more Christ-like. What are our ambitions? I thank you for your time this evening. I hope that we do focus on serving God. And our ambition is to be more Christ-like in our life. Any prayer, question, announcements anybody may have at this time?